Welcome to NTD Good Morning.
Here are today's top stories. President Trump hosting the Saudi Crown Prince for a day of pomp and circumstance at the White House, with the Crown Prince upping his planned U.S. investments to $1 trillion.
All unclassified Epstein file materials could soon be released after the Senate and House greenlight a bill ordering their publishing.
The Trump administration is making major structural changes to the Education Department, saying the steps will reduce bureaucracy and improve efficiency for schools. Some lawmakers are pushing back.
Local leaders oppose a surge of ICE agents coming to the Big Apple. An Operation Swamp Sweep is due to hit Louisiana and Mississippi next month. The goal? 5,000 arrests.
A 3-judge panel has blocked a congressional map redrawn by the GOP-led Texas legislature. The new map could have given Republicans 5 additional seats in the U.S. House.
And with the housing market becoming more and more unaffordable for low and middle income earners, we get some analysis on President Trump's suggestions for affordable housing.
This is NTD Good Morning, live from our global headquarters in New York City. Here are Stephanie Cox and Carrie Dunst.
Good morning. Great to have you with us.
Today's Wednesday, November 19th. You're watching NTD Good Morning, and today's top news, a look at President Trump's meeting with Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. Trump announced yesterday that the United States would designate Saudi Arabia as a major non-NATO ally.
Now, this move represents a substantial elevation of the Muslim kingdom's diplomatic standing with the United States.
Tonight, I'm pleased to announce that we're taking our military cooperation to even greater heights by formally designating Saudi Arabia as a major non-NATO ally, which is something that is very important to them. A stronger and more capable alliance will advance the interests of both countries, and it will serve the highest interest of peace.
Well, it's too hard to speak after Mr. President. No one speaks better than him. But first of all, I will start with thanking Mr. President for the warm and great welcome that we have today. We believe the opportunities is huge, so we're going to focus on implementation and keep increasing the opportunities between our both countries. Maybe next time.
The designation means the two nations have agreed to work more closely on military, economic, and related initiatives. The Saudi government will now gain priority access to American military equipment, including F-35 fighter jets. Saudi Arabia joins 20 other nations as a major non-NATO ally. The list includes countries in the Middle East such as Israel, Qatar, Egypt, Jordan, and others.
And Tesla CEO Elon Musk and Portugal's soccer star Cristiano Ronaldo also joined Trump and bin Salman at the black tie White House dinner last night. Trump commented on Ronaldo's presence, joking that his son Barron respects his father a little bit more now. Ronaldo plays for Saudi club Al Nassr. Amazon owner Jeff Bezos was also in attendance.
NTD's Washington correspondent Mariotsu has more key takeaways from bin Salman's visit.
The Crown Prince, MBS for short, praises President Trump's peace efforts and announces right off the bat that he's boosting Saudi Arabia's $600 billion of investments in the U.S. to $1 trillion. Take a look.
You're saying to me now that the $600 billion will be $1 trillion.
Definitely, because what we are signing it will facilitate that, and
I like that very much.
President Trump greeting the Saudi Crown Prince on the South Lawn with an honor guard, military band, and flyover, and touting his administration's economic agenda and tariff strategy.
You know, when you invest $1 trillion, that's national security for us, too. Because it creates jobs, it creates a lot of things.
Mr. President, it's the most hottest country in the planet, but what you're creating is not about opportunity today, it's about also long-term opportunity in us in America, and we want to be part of it.
The president calling the Crown Prince a very good friend.
Hey, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. And praising the changes MBS has brought to Saudi Arabia.
I'm very proud of the job he's done. What he's done is incredible in terms of human rights and everything else.
But this is also MBS's first visit to Washington since the 2018 murder of journalist Jamal Khashoggi inside the Saudi consulate in Istanbul. U.S. intelligence believed the Crown Prince approved the operation, while MBS has denied ordering it but has acknowledged it happened on his watch.
About the journalists, it's really painful to hear, and it's a huge mistake, and we are doing our best that this doesn't happen again.
President Trump quickly stepped in to defend his guest when a reporter pressed the Crown Prince on Khashoggi.
You're mentioning somebody that was extremely controversial. Whether you like him or didn't like him, things happen. But he knew nothing about it, and we can leave it at that. You don't have to embarrass our guest by asking a question like that.
And the president didn't stop there, calling the question horrible and insubordinate and suggesting the FCC should pull ABC's broadcast license over what he called fake and biased coverage.
I think the license should be taken away from ABC because your news is so fake and it's so wrong.
Meanwhile, as lawmakers pass the bill to release the Epstein files, President Trump denies association with the financier, claiming Epstein donated to Democrats and pointing to others with ties to him.
I have nothing to do with Jeffrey Epstein. I threw him out of my club many years ago because I thought he was a sick pervert. And what the Epstein is a Democrat hoax to try and get me not to be able to talk about the $21 trillion that I talked about today. It's a hoax.
President Trump urges Republicans to stay focused on what he calls major policy achievements of his administration, touting, for instance, the big, beautiful bill, securing the border and reducing inflation. And meanwhile, MBS told President Trump that he's open to Saudi Arabia joining the Abraham Accords and normalizing its relations with Israel, but only if the agreement provides a path forward for Palestinian statehood. This is as President Trump confirms that he will be sending the same model of advanced F-35 fighter jets to Saudi Arabia as Israel receives, calling both of those countries close allies of the U.S.
Thank you so much, Mari, for that report. All unclassified Epstein file materials should be released soon. The Senate unanimously passed a bill yesterday ordering their release.
Yeah, this bill now goes to President Trump after the House passed it 427-1.
Trump has said he will sign it. The Epstein Files Transparency Act orders the Department of Justice to release in a searchable and downloadable format all unclassified records tied to Epstein. The documents must be released no later than 30 days following the enactment of the bill.
And the bill prohibits the Justice Department from withholding, delaying, or redacting records for political reasons. However, the department would be allowed to withhold records that identify the victims or consist of child sexual abuse material.
All redactions would have to be accompanied by a written explanation published in the Federal Register and submitted to Congress.
And our Washington correspondent, Luis Eduardo Martinez, has more on this story.
427 lawmakers voted in favor, and only Republican Congressman Clay Higgins voted against the bill to compel the Department of Justice to release the Epstein files.
Don't muck it up in the Senate. Don't get too cute. We're all paying attention. If you want to add some additional protections for these survivors, go for it. But if you do anything that prevents any disclosure, you are not for the people and you are not part of this effort.
The president has also said that he would sign the bill into law if it reached his desk.
Democrats are trying to use the Epstein matter as a political weapon to distract from their own party's failures. And in a desperate attempt, they're trying to somehow tie President Trump to the scandal.
Speaker of the House Mike Johnson, who opposes the bill, has warned the public of potential flaws in the legislation and potential impacts if it's signed into law.
The discharge petition could create new victims, okay? Because it requires the DOJ to release information even in cases where the DOJ or the FBI has already reviewed it and determined it is not credible. It is false information.
Republicans have made it clear that their investigation through the House Oversight Committee on the Jeffrey Epstein case will not end if the Jeffrey Epstein files that the Department of Justice has are released.
And they deserve justice. It has been too long delayed. Not just justice for what they were made to endure, but also we need answers on why it took so long for the Department of Justice itself to do that job under previous leadership.
The Department of Justice is pursuing investigations on links in between prominent Democrats and Jeffrey Epstein. Former Democratic Treasury Secretary Larry Summers stepped down from public life after emails linked him to Jeffrey Epstein. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Luis Eduardo Martinez, NTD News.
And many internet users around the world experienced major outages yesterday. It affected websites like ChatGPT and the online game League of Legends. It happened due to an issue with a widely used internet infrastructure company called Cloudflare. Cloudflare's chief technology officer posted an apology for the outage, saying it wasn't a cyber attack. The company said the issue is now resolved. Cloudflare takes content from 20% of the world's websites and then mirrors them on thousands of servers worldwide. Other platforms that experienced outages included X, Shopify, Dropbox, Coinbase, and the Moody's credit rating service. New Jersey Transit said parts of its digital services were affected. And in France, a national railway company said its websites were affected. And joining us to discuss this Cloudflare outage is Wasim Mirza. Wasim is a British journalist, actor, and a former BBC tech expert. Wasim, thank you for joining us this morning. First off, can you just expound on Cloudflare's business?
Yeah, sure. It operates what is known to be a very vast global network. It supports countless different websites and apps with traffic management and essentially a protection system against attacks. Now, a bug, as you pointed out, in Cloudflare's bot management configuration system created a faulty software update that literally spread across the entire platform, which caused many users around the world to start seeing those infamous error 500 internal server error messages when they tried to access popular sites, including X, ChatGPT, Spotify, and others. And even outage tracking platforms like downdetector.com. And that's when you realize just how big a problem this was.
Yeah, it's one of these companies that you use every day and perhaps never have even heard of. I'd love to get your understanding as to what could potentially be learned from this incident, both from Cloudflare and maybe just from society at large.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the outage is a sharp reminder that just a few companies now literally control very critical choke points on the World Wide Web. And when one of those comes down, like it did in this case, millions can feel the shockwave pretty much immediately. And moving from many local systems to a few global giants, such as in this case Cloudflare, or in the previous year's outage with CrowdStrike, it makes things, in my opinion, that much more efficient. But simultaneously, it does actually introduce a single point of failure with global consequences, as we've seen.
Yeah, we don't really use the term web or World Wide Web, even though we put them in those URL strings every single day. But it potentially is an analogy to understand sort of this infrastructure. To piggyback off that, I was very surprised that even Google services were affected, since my understanding is Google is also a competitor of Cloudflare, going back to that kind of web construct. Can you explain how all that works?
Yeah, I mean, so many other systems were affected. And as you say, there were some knock-on impacts on the rest of the web. And if you think of it a bit like a freeway, think of Cloudflare as this giant motorway in the center of the internet, and it helps traffic move very quickly and safely. But that motorway in this case got jammed, and big platforms, even outage trackers, couldn't get through it. And because of the way that computers around the internet are interconnected together, even those that are seemingly competitors can get stuck on that freeway jam, as it were. So unless backup routes and there's more diversity built into the nature of the internet, these kinds of shock outages, I think, will keep affecting daily life in both the US, the UK, and around the world, unless we get a real handle on the essential plumbing, if we like, of the internet.
Yeah, it's funny. Just a generation ago, everything was done with paper. Even getting on a flight was done with paper, and now it feels like we can't live without these services. Fortunately, this time, things like flights, banking, and healthcare were not affected. But as we start to round up, I just want to get your sense of what might be some risks should one of these outages be more severe in the future. How could that affect, critical services, not just conveniences?
Yeah, I mean, we're very fortunate with this outage that it wasn't as widespread as we first thought it could be. And it brings me back to the previous year's outage from CrowdStrike, which I remember covering on this network before, which did have seismic impacts right around the world on many different computer systems. It even brought whole television networks to a halt live on air, bringing news anchors back to hand written notes on paper. Such was the severity of it, and of course causing flight chaos. And the problem is that the way that the internet is so distributed in this way, if we don't figure out how to diversify the internet to more than just a handful of choke points controlled by a few companies, then I'm afraid we're going to have to get used to seeing outages every few years like this.
Well, certainly fortunate that yesterday's outage was not as more severe, and definitely appreciate you joining us this morning and sharing your insights. Wasim Mirza, thank you.
Thank you.
And just like that, thousands of people around the world yesterday got a sense of just how connected the internet really is after Cloudflare's hours-long outage. But joining us now for insight on that outage is Kirk Offel, the CEO of Overwatch Mission Critical. Good to see you again, Kirk.
Great to see you again as well. Thank you for having me this morning.
For sure. Now, it's one of a series of outages yesterday's in recent weeks, including Amazon Web Services and Azure, which belongs to Microsoft, that all sent ripples throughout the internet. Why are we seeing so many major cloud outages lately from all of those that I've just mentioned?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'm going to sum it up with one word. It's reliability. And reliability means there's not enough resiliency built into the initial designs. The application demand is now exceeding the capacity of the design. And that's going to be a common theme as we continue to grow and scale. We've never built things to this magnitude and scale. And now we're building things and designing things, and we're testing and discovering the limits of those things. So what you're seeing is a reliability issue, and that reliability issue comes down to design capabilities. And you can hear, as the CEO said, they just had to make some changes to their design, and they were able to get it back online.
Like any cutting edge technology, I guess it just is continually iterative. But what is digging into the facts of it, what is really behind these crashes in terms of the technology limits? But also, is there human error involved? It seemed to come down to a file that had a glitch. Could that be resolved? Yeah,
good question. Don't think of it as human error. Yeah, it's a great question. Don't think of it as human error. Think of it as more as human capacity. So we build these things, and we have so much capacity or volume or velocity of internet traffic that can go through things. At the same time, we are trying to build more right now. So think of it like this. In the world, in the United States, let's say we have 60 gigawatts of data centers today. Well, imagine that it took us about 15 years to build the first 10 gigawatts. We're building 10 gigawatts to put online right now. So we are building data center capacity at a volume and a velocity that has never been seen before in the history of mankind. And if we're building 10 gigawatts to put online right now, 90 to 95% of that has already been pre-leased and sold, which means we can't keep up to get even, let alone try to get ahead. And the only thing that's really harming our ability to build these availability zones to give more reliability and redundancy to these designs is a skilled labor force. And we just are trying to find a talent from everywhere we can find it. We're pulling them from the trades. We're pulling them from the first responders. We do a good job of trying to pull directly from the military, where there's civilian trades like electrical contractors, mechanical contractors, EHV experts, things that are trained in the military that transcend into what we did in the civilian fleet. And we're trying to merge those two things together. So it's not human error. It's more just we need more humans to build more capacity so we could add more reliability and redundancy to these designs.
And this is exactly what, as you mentioned, your company is working towards and working on mission critical infrastructure projects. What else can other companies do right now to prevent cascading failures across the internet?
Yeah, they're going to need to build more, and they're going to need to take what they have and realize the capacity has limitations to what they have. And the only way to add more reliability and redundancy to this is to add more availability zones adjacent to what we have. So you have to look at cloud and AI as a utility. The first utility was water. The second was electricity. The third was connectivity in your home. The fourth was gas. The fifth utility during the fifth industrial revolution is AI and cloud services. And you have to treat this like you would any other trade. So we are right now trying to lead a vertical of industry that doesn't exist by creating essentially an entirely new trade designed just for one thing, and that's building data centers. At the end of the day, there will be two verticals of industries: data centers, which support AI capacity demand and cloud, and then every other industry that's an adjacent industry that's in orbit of data centers and supply and demand. So we need more human beings to get into the space to build more availability zones, to add more reliability to the digital infrastructure that we've already created, so that we can start avoiding more of these downtimes. These downtimes are just simply an example of we've reached the reliability point and the capacity limits of this technology, and we need to build more.
So tell me more about this concept of the fifth industrial revolution.
No, it's a great question. So think of it like this. What AI is in 2025 is the equivalency of what the automobile was in 1925. And we were still building Model Ts till 1927. So when we built an automotive industry, we didn't know that it would have the meaningful impact that it does. It has an incredible impact on society, but it maybe has had one of the greatest impacts on humanity. And when we built that industry, there were no roads, there were no regulations, there were no ethics or driver's license, there wasn't even service stations. And if you needed a part for your car, you had to go to a bike shop to have a fabricator build it. We didn't even have technicians and service capacities for automobiles when we first put it out and introduced it to the world. Now you could go to college just to get a degree in mechanical engineering to go work in Formula One. We are at the forefront of an emerging industry that has never existed before. And today, the automobile industry 100 years ago is now showing us how to navigate through the same trials and tribulations of labor of 2025, which is we have to build career fields around this type of technology. And we have to give people the opportunity to go get jobs of meaningful significance. These jobs don't require college degrees, and these are the jobs that build back the middle class. So the fifth industrial revolution is about transforming and unleashing technology in a way that really benefits us as the consumer. So the third industrial revolution was a little bit like Goldilocks, but it was too hot. The fourth, which we just wrapped up, is a little too cold. The fifth industrial revolution is the Goldilocks moment where technology is accretive to us as humans, and it's just about right. So our job is to unleash more emerging technology that improves the lives of everyone around the world.
And just coming back to the latest outages, they really do impact lives. Notably, last month's AWS outage reportedly caused disruptions to hospitals using the service. What more, if anything, do you think government should do to hold critical infrastructure companies like Cloudflare accountable for these disruptions?
Yeah, so like when the automobile industry was first introduced, there was no standardization and regulation of quality, not only as they were being built, but how they operated. Now we have very strict rules and regulations on how to get a license to operate a vehicle. Then there's certain certifications and training programs that people go through to be licensed and certified to go repair and provide services to these things. When a company tips into the mainstream, it typically requires ethics, along as governance and regulation. So this is an industry that has existed for 30 to 40 years that no one really paid attention to. And now it's at the forefront of everybody's lives because now we see how it directly impacts our own quality of life. So yes, you will see that as something begins to emerge, the government will have more of an impact and a bigger reach into the things that we're doing, because at the end of the day, AI will be used primarily for three major verticals of industry. The first will be national security, because it is the most advanced weapon, machine, and tech ever built. The second will be for energy, and the third will be for healthcare. So we're going to need to figure out how we apply the same means and methods of establishing a new vertical of industry into this technology industry. And that begins with some sort of oversight, and sad to say, some government regulation perhaps, but there will be ethics that will be imposed on this industry that allow us to scale it with a career path, so where we can bring on people that can help transform the industry and build careers that don't need college degrees along the way.
And certainly ethics being one of the major differences between humans and machines. Thank you so much, Kirk Offel, for your insights today.
It's great to see you again. Thank you so much.
And you.
Thanks for joining us at NTD Good Morning. The Trump administration is moving ahead with major structural changes to the Department of Education.
Officials say the steps will reduce bureaucracy, while critics argue the changes could create risks for students. Here's more.
The Department of Education says it's preparing to ship several of its core programs to other federal agencies as part of an effort to dismantle the department and reduce federal spending. According to a press release, one of the most sweeping changes involves moving more than $30 billion in federal education grants to the Department of Labor, which would also take on a larger role in overseeing K-12 programs. Education programs serving Native American students will be transferred to the Department of the Interior, which the administration says will become the key point of contact for tribes and students. International education and foreign language programs will be shifted to the State Department, which the administration says is better placed to streamline funding, improve data collection, and advance national security interests. Childcare programs for parents in college and oversight of foreign medical student accreditation will be reassigned to the Department of Health and Human Services. Secretary of Education Linda McMahon told Fox News yesterday the restructuring is part of an effort to break up Washington bureaucracy and return control to states and local leaders.
And the announcement really follows the plan that President Trump has had since day one, and that is returning education to the states. He fully believes, as do I, the best education is that's closest to the child and not run from a bureaucracy in Washington, D.C.
McMahon said the Department of Education will continue to fund, manage, and oversee the programs it is transferring to other agencies. She called it a test run to see if they will function more efficiently this way. The administration calls these moves interagency agreements and says they are allowed under the Economy Act. During his campaign, President Trump repeatedly vowed to close the Department of Education, arguing that authority should return to the states. But that's a decision the administration says it's ultimately up to Congress. McMahon on Tuesday questioned the necessity of having a Department of Education at all, saying the recent government shutdown had no effect on students and teachers.
The Federal Department of Education furloughed 90% of its staff. And what happened? Nothing. Schools stayed open. Students went to class. Teachers got paid. The shutdown proved our schools don't depend on Washington bureaucracy to function.
The restructuring has already triggered sharp backlash from Democrats. Senator Elizabeth Warren described the announcement as part of an assault on public education. Some Republicans are cheering the changes. Iowa Governor Kim Reynolds called it a great step toward eliminating the federal education bureaucracy and ensuring greater efficiency in delivering services to schools. But Republican Congressman Brian Fitzpatrick, whose district includes parts of Philadelphia's suburbs, defended the Department of Education's functions as foundational. He said changing them without congressional oversight would pose real risks to students.
New York City will see expanded immigration enforcement soon. Border czar Tom Homan says that ongoing operations in the sanctuary city will be beefed up.
Regardless of Republican or Democratic city, we're going to enforce our laws across this country and take those public safety threats off the street, Bill. But I'll say this, I've said it from day one. Sanctuary cities, we're flooding the zone because we know they're releasing public safety threats into communities every day. If the mayor of New York City wants to come and talk about making the streets safer, open up for discussion. I'm willing to meet with anybody. President Trump's willing to meet with anybody. But let's get together and work it together. We much rather work with these sanctuary cities than keep, putting our agents at extreme risk.
The announcement comes 1 month after ICE agents conducted a sweep on street vendors in Manhattan, which turned into chaos after agents were swarmed by protesters. Homan did not say when the escalation in the Big Apple would begin. DHS would oversee any operations. Local leaders oppose the surge, and New York Mayor-elect Zohran Mamdani said his city is committed to upholding its sanctuary policies.
The Department of Homeland Security is also launching a 2-month immigration crackdown in Louisiana and Mississippi. The operation is called Swamp Sweep. It'll deploy about 250 federal agents beginning in December. It aims to arrest nearly 5,000 people. And an update on Baltimore's Francis Scott Key Bridge. The National Transportation Safety Board now says a loose wire caused a power failure leading to the collision. The cargo ship Dolly crashed into the bridge in March 2024, and that killed 6 construction workers. The investigation found a single loose wire in the electrical system that caused a breaker to unexpectedly open. That set off a sequence of events that led to 2 vessel blackouts and a loss of propulsion and steering. The safety board found that wire label banding prevented the wire from being fully inserted, causing the bad connection. NTSB Chair Jennifer Homendy compared the painstaking search for the wire to finding a single loose rivet on the Eiffel Tower. The NTSB and the ship's manufacturer had to test thousands of wires to find the problem. The board also said a lack of countermeasures to reduce the bridge's vulnerability to such impacts contributed to the collapse.
Meanwhile, a 3-judge panel says a new congressional map drawn by the Texas legislature cannot be used for the 2026 election. NTD's Arlene Richards has the details.
A 3-judge federal panel ruled on Tuesday that the state of Texas will have to use its old 2021 congressional map for the 2026 election, instead of the new map that was passed in August. The new map had easily cleared the GOP-controlled legislature and was then signed into law by Governor Greg Abbott. It could have given Republicans an additional 5 seats in the U.S. House. If the new map could be used for the 2026 election, Republicans would have a chance for 30 of the state's 38 seats, up from the 25 they currently hold, which would help protect the GOP majority in the U.S. House. Judge Jeffrey Brown, who sat on the panel, said there was a public perception that the redrawing was about politics. In addition, he said there was significant evidence of racial gerrymandering in the new map. The decision comes 10 days into the month-long period when candidates can sign up for the March primary. The filing deadline is December 8th. Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton is wasting no time preparing an appeal to the Supreme Court. In a press release on Tuesday, Paxton said he would be submitting a filing to the highest court and asking them to pause the panel's decision. He said the map was entirely legal and that it represented the political affiliations of Texas. Paxton further said that Democratic states across the country had systematically reduced representation for Republican voters in their congressional delegation. It's not immediately clear if the state will be granted the right to restore the new map in time for 2026. Arlene Richards, NTD News.
Thanks to Arlene for that report. Next, with AI chatbots being built onto everyday devices, AI companies are taking steps to address concerns.
But lawmakers say additional oversight is needed in light of some jarring interactions with people. NTD's David Lamb has more on a House panel hearing where psychiatrists shared their findings.
As artificial chatbots become more available, lawmakers look into the risks and benefits of the products.
My goal for today's hearing is to have a balanced, honest conversation about the potential benefits and harms that AI chatbots pose to Americans.
On Tuesday, experts testified before the U.S. House Subcommittee on Oversight and Investigations on Artificial Intelligence. Generative AI chatbots are computer programs powered by large language models, LLMs, that simulate human conversation with the user.
A new term has been coined, AI psychosis, which describes when a user's interactions with a chatbot lead to distorted beliefs or even delusions. As we've seen in some absolutely tragic cases, users experiencing mental health crises have even taken their own lives.
Congress members mentioned that since AI chatbots emerged, these cases have happened after long-term relationships with chatbots. In some cases, the chatbots encouraged or affirmed suicidal ideations. And while there were benefits such as accessibility, the doctors also pointed out current challenges.
In another study of women in a war zone, access to an AI chatbot was able to reduce anxiety by 30%, although human therapy was more effective at 50%. However, AI chatbots are not yet ready to replace clinicians or therapists.
If I try to do a search or use a chatbot to, plumb more papers in a particular area, I have found that they generally just fabricate the titles and they don't produce outputs that I can rely on for my work.
What happens in a lot of research papers now is something called LLM as judge. And so what they do is they actually have the large language model read all those outputs and try to code it. So anytime you see the word LLM as judge, I would be careful or say we should at least have a human reading it and checking over it.
Sensio University reported this year, based on a survey, among the respondents who use AI and self-report mental health challenges, almost 49% use large language models for therapeutic support. Towards the end of the hearing, Congresswoman Kim Schreier urged the public to seek real-life relationships during a time when there's fewer, she says. David Lamb, NTD News.
And staying with health and tech news, a new report says access to life-saving medicine and simple technology may be at risk unless the U.S. government acts fast.
The congressionally appointed U.S.-China Commission released its annual report detailing how the CCP could weaponize its supply chain controls on pharmaceuticals and technology. NTD's Washington correspondent Jack Bradley brings us this story.
Chinese producers wield significant control over active pharmaceutical ingredients and key equipment used in the U.S. electrical grid. U.S. reliance on China creates a dangerous dependence that China can weaponize if it wants to.
The U.S.-China Economic and Security Review Commission says the Chinese Communist Party is aiming to weaponize U.S. reliance on Chinese medicine and electronics, with the threat of halting exports to have the upper hand in any bargaining negotiation. Now, they also examined other areas that could harm the U.S. and global economic stability, like the invasion of Taiwan, for instance.
Chinese incursions into Taiwan's air defense identification zone have increased 15,000% over 5 years, from only 20 in 2019 to over 3,000 in 2024. And they're on pace for even more incursions in 2025.
Beijing used its monopoly over critical mineral refining to impose export controls on rare earth elements. We can be sure China will be ready to weaponize these choke points again when politically advantageous.
A couple months ago, the CCP put export restrictions on rare earth elements, and that move triggered a trade war between the U.S. and China that later calmed down by a recent trade deal involving lower tariffs and removing those export restrictions. China has a monopoly on processing these rare earth elements, and without them, it could harm the U.S. and world economies and their national security, as rare earths are used in things from iPhones to missiles. The commission also says the U.S. needs more data on just how reliant we are on Chinese products. That's as some products that don't overtly say they're made in China may have parts that are made in China, making the U.S. just unknown to how vulnerable it may be to certain supply chains controlled by China.
A lot of the time when we talk about getting drugs or medications, other things from India, for instance, a lot of the original inputs to that medication, to those pharmaceuticals came from China originally.
The commission recommends responding to China's non-market practices by uniting with other countries to place import barriers on subsidized Chinese products. And the commission also raised the necessity for the U.S. to de-risk from the Chinese-dominated industries and instead rely on itself and its partners. Reporting by Jack Bradley, NTD News.
And up ahead, Christian communities in Nigeria are under attack, with thousands killed and kidnapped this year. Global leaders and rap artist Nicki Minaj are taking the issue to the UN, calling for urgent action. We're going to have that story and more. We'll be right back.
And a Chinese espionage alert in Britain. Security services say Chinese agents are building relationships with lawmakers via LinkedIn, posing as normal companies, but acting on behalf of the Chinese regime. The UK has announced protective measures, but critics call for more to be done. NTD's international correspondent Malcolm Hudson has that story.
Britain's security service MI5 issued an espionage alert on Tuesday, warning lawmakers that Chinese spies are targeting them by posing as headhunters or companies, highlighting two individuals reaching out via LinkedIn. Amanda Chiu, the chief executive of BRYR Executive Search, and Shirley Shen, co-founder of the Internship Union. MI5 said these two individuals conduct outreach at scale on behalf of the Chinese Ministry of State Security. British Security Minister Dan Jarvis said the government will not tolerate Chinese interference.
It is not just parliamentarians who should be concerned by this. Parliamentary staff, economists, think tank employees, geopolitical consultants, and government officials have all been targeted for their networks and access to politicians.
He said China has a low threshold for what information it considers to be of value and will collect individual pieces of data to build a wider picture. Jarvis announced measures to tackle threats from China and other nations, including $223 million to improve encrypted technology used by civil servants to safeguard sensitive work, and security guidance for election candidates, along with plans to tighten rules on political donations.
I can also announce that this government has completed the removal of surveillance equipment manufactured by companies subject to the National Intelligence Law of the People's Republic of China from all sensitive sites we maintain in the UK and around the world.
He said China also poses threats to other sectors such as education and manufacturing. Opposition Home Office Minister Alicia Kearns urged the government to put China in the enhanced tier of the Foreign Influence Registration Scheme.
The minister today stated that the Chinese government is using proxy organisations to interfere in and commit espionage against our democracy. That is literally why we introduced the Foreign Influence Registration Scheme.
She said Tuesday's revelations come as no surprise and are just the latest in an ever-growing list of actions by the Chinese Communist Party to interfere with and undermine Britain's sovereignty. Jarvis said the government is looking to see whether it's necessary to add China to the enhanced tier, but has not yet made a decision. The warning comes after British prosecutors abandoned a case in September against 2 British men charged with spying on members of Parliament for China. Prosecutors said the British government had not provided clear evidence to show that Beijing was a threat to its national security. It also comes just weeks before the government must decide whether to approve a massive new Chinese embassy. Critics say it would pose a major security risk, as a Chinese spy base located a short distance from London's financial and governmental centres. Malcolm Hudson, NTD News, UK.
Welcome back to NTD Good Morning. I'm Carrie Dunst. If you're just joining us now, here are some of today's top headlines. President Trump hosted Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman yesterday at the White House. During their meeting, Trump announced the U.S. would designate Saudi Arabia as a, quote, major non-NATO ally. This represents a substantial elevation of the country's diplomatic standing with the U.S. The Crown Prince also praised Trump's peace efforts and announced that he's going to boost Saudi Arabia's U.S. investments up to $1 trillion. And the Senate unanimously passed the bill to release all unclassified Epstein file materials yesterday, following it passing the House at 427-1. The bill will now go to President Trump's desk, where he's indicated that he would sign it. The documents must be released no later than 30 days following the enactment of the bill. The Justice Department would still be allowed to withhold records that identify the victims or those that consist of child sexual abuse material. And former Treasury Secretary Larry Summers has announced this morning he is resigning from the OpenAI board after emails linked him with Epstein. And New York City will see expanded immigration enforcement soon. Border czar Tom Homan made the announcement yesterday. It comes a month after ICE agents conducted a sweep on street vendors in Manhattan, which turned into chaos after agents were swarmed by protesters. And federal agents are also coming to Louisiana and Mississippi in an operation that's called Swamp Sweep. It aims to arrest 5,000 people. And staying with the Trump administration, they are moving ahead with major structural changes to the Department of Education, preparing to shift several of its core programs to other federal agencies as part of an effort to dismantle the department. One change involves moving more than $30 billion in federal grants to the Department of Labor. Secretary of Education Linda McMahon says the restructuring is part of an effort to break up bureaucracy and return control to states and local leaders.
Thanks so much, Carrie. Nigeria is facing a rising wave of attacks on its Christian population, with killings and kidnappings reported across the country. U.S. officials and musical artists Nicki Minaj took the issue to the United Nations, calling for urgent action to protect Nigeria's Christian communities. NTD's Christina Corona tells us more.
Nicki Minaj is joining the Trump administration's push to address rising attacks on Christians in Nigeria. U.S. Ambassador to the UN, Mike Waltz, invited her to speak at the United Nations, praising her for using her platform to highlight what he calls severe religious persecution.
In Nigeria, Christians are being targeted, driven from their homes, and killed. Churches have been burned. Families have been torn apart, and entire communities live in fear constantly, simply because of how they pray.
Advocacy groups report more than 7,000 Christians have been killed from January to August of this year. The nonprofit Open Door says 80% of all violence against Christians worldwide is now happening in Nigeria.
Pastors have been beheaded for preaching the Sermon on the Mount. Entire villages wake up to gunfire because they dare to commit the crime the crime of calling Jesus their Lord.
Speaker Sean Nelson explained why he believes Christians are being targeted.
Anybody who stands in the face of a totalizing and violent extremist view shouldn't be allowed to exist. They should be stamped out and wiped out. And of course, it means that you can also take their land. It means you can take their wives and their girls.
Nigeria is the most populated country in Africa in 2025, with around 237.5 million people, and almost half are just under 18. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu leads a Muslim-majority nation of about 53%, while Christians make up roughly 44%. Minaj repeatedly emphasized this is not about choosing a side.
Religious freedom means we all can sing our faith regardless of who we are, where we live, and what we believe. Protecting Christians in Nigeria is not about taking sides. I will care if anyone, anywhere, is being persecuted for their beliefs.
This comes after President Trump said he's labeling Nigeria a country of particular concern under the International Religious Freedom Act, saying Christians there are facing a serious threat.
They're killing record numbers of Christians in Nigeria. They're killing the Christians and killing them in very large numbers. We're not going to allow that to happen.
Earlier this month, Trump threatened to cut all U.S. aid to Nigeria if its government fails to stop the killing of Christians. Christina Corona, NTD News.
Meanwhile, China-Japan tensions continue. Japan has lodged a complaint against China over viral social media videos.
It says the clips misrepresents a recent high-level diplomatic meeting.
We have lodged complaints against the Chinese side regarding the press arrangements being made without proper coordination with Japan.
The video appeared to show a Chinese official speaking with his hands in his pockets to the Japanese official. The Japanese official appeared to look deferential and apologetic with a bowed head.
And Beijing told Tokyo today it will halt imports of Japanese seafood. The message appears tied to Prime Minister Sanae Takahachi's recent comments on defending Taiwan in the event of a Chinese attack.
Meanwhile, Japan's economic security minister is warning the country's heavy reliance on China poses growing risks as tensions escalate.
Welcome back to NTD Good Morning. I'm Carrie Dunst. Affordable housing has been a major priority for both the Trump administration and his political opposition. Some of Trump's plans suggest breaking with some long-standing conventions in an attempt to make home ownership more attainable for low and middle-income earners. Joining us now to discuss is Jeff Ostrowski. He's a housing market analyst from Bankrate. Jeff, good to see you this morning. Let's start with this concept of a 50-year mortgage. We've never had that before. It's always been 30-year at the most. So is that possible, and why now? What's going on with that?
Well, yep. Good morning. Yeah, and you're right. The 30-year loan has been the longest term. There's been some talk over the years of a 40-year loan, but Bill Pulte, one of Trump's top housing officials, has proposed 50-year mortgages, and really no details yet. To answer the question why, the idea is that by this lengthening the amortization schedule, you might be able to lower payments a little and qualify more buyers. But then the details don't really quite work out. So, I crunched the numbers on a 50-year loan, on a $400,000 loan, assuming that the mortgage rate would be about 3/4 of a point higher on a 50-year loan compared to a 30-year loan. A borrower really is only going to save about $56 a month. So then the question is, for 10 lattes a month, are you really going to take both a higher rate and a much longer repayment schedule? So, definitely an intriguing idea, but whether it's a significant solution to the housing crisis, I would say is uncertain.
Very interesting. All right, well, staying with mortgages, let's talk about portable mortgages. Those are not new. Some mortgages already allow that, but what's new in Trump's administration suggesting them?
Yeah. So this same official, Bill Pulte, has also suggested making more mortgages portable or assumable. Right now, it's just VA loans that are assumable, and the rest of the types of loans that taken by most U.S. consumers are not. So, I mean, that definitely would have an effect on what's called the mortgage lock-in effect. So basically, everyone who took the 3% loan back in the pandemic is not going anywhere because they don't want to trade their 3% loan for a loan at 6.5%. But I don't know that you can make those mortgages retroactively assumable. So I think, if more mortgages were to become assumable or portable, that would happen only from at some point in the future going forward. So it's not really going to address the big issue in the U.S. housing market right now, which is that so many people just refuse to move because they don't want to give up those super low mortgage rates.
Yeah, and I want to get into your views on interest rates in a moment, but just to pivot aside for a second. All of these programs are meant to get more people into home ownership. You could see how that just creates a cascade of virtuous cycles, right? You have people who are more invested in their communities. They're helping out the local businesses in their area. But what are some of the other reasons why it's such a focus for the Trump administration to get people into home ownership who may not have been able to in the past?
Well, definitely the homeownership and the affordability crisis is a big issue, especially for younger Americans. I mean, the median age of first-time homebuyers keeps getting older and older. It's up to 40 now, according to the National Association of Realtors. A generation ago, people were buying houses in their early 30s, even late 20s. So yes, it's definitely housing affordability is a pain point, and it's one thing to complain about the price of eggs or the price of gas, but housing is a much larger cost, and so therefore just a much bigger budget item for most Americans. But you mentioned two things that would increase demand for homes. But the real problem in the U.S. housing market is not enough supply. Housing economists agree that the U.S. housing market is undersupplied, underbuilt by many millions of homes. And so creating new demand is not really going to solve the problem by itself, just because if you've got more buyers, that's going to push up prices for a limited supply of a product.
So let's then talk about addressing the supply side of the equation. Interest rates probably a big part, at least in terms of new construction loans, but those are a little bit harder for a lower or middle income earner to get into because of the higher upfront costs. So what are some of the things that might increase supply?
Well, the Trump administration has talked about opening federal lands for development, and that's another proposal that's intriguing. It sounds good, but then when you dig into the details, it's another thing that's hard to see that as a real solution. Most federal lands are far away from job centers. So the real housing affordability crisis is in the major coastal metro areas, the fast-growing economies, places like California, New York, Seattle, Boston, Miami. There just aren't a lot of federal lands within commuting distance to those job centers. I guess one exception would be Las Vegas. Las Vegas is surrounded by a lot of federal lands, and maybe that there could be a release valve in the Las Vegas market if some of the federal lands around Vegas were to open to development. So that's definitely one proposal that's come out from the Trump administration, but not a whole lot of details yet in terms of who would be building homes, what the price points would be, and where these homes would be.
Yeah, let's focus a little bit on those coastal areas and those population centers. Mamdani just won in New York City. He campaigned on rent freezing. If you're trying to encourage the building of new supply, creating an environment where those who will put upfront capital to building new homes, when they're unsure if they're going to be able to get a market rate for it, seems counterintuitive. So what do we do in these coastal areas, which tend to have more socialist policies on the rise?
Yeah, that's always the disconnect. The politicians and a lot of voters want to say, oh, well, just freeze the rent. Free market proponents and most economists would say that rent caps, rent freezes are counterproductive because you're essentially disincentivizing new development. I guess New York is a special case in that it's, a very renter-heavy market, a very expensive market. But broadening out to the rest of the country, the real challenge has been not federal policies or federal lands being opened up, but just the idea that local residents don't want new development, and city councils, county commissions, local planning and zoning boards have been opposed to more dense development. And I think everyone agrees that in a lot of these pricey markets, more development and more dense development is the real key.
Yeah, and Jeff, just as we finish up, kind of pivoting back to the initial discussion on the demand side, can you help us understand what the form FICO 10T is and how that affects abilities for lower and middle income borrowers to get access to mortgages and capital?
Oh, yeah. Okay. Now you're testing my knowledge. There are so many FICO scores that I have to admit I don't. I can't keep track of all of them. I know one interesting thing that the Trump administration has done is to allow an additional credit score. So a competitor of FICO, the Vantage score, is now being accepted for mortgage applications, and that's an interesting score because for people with shallower credit histories, shorter credit histories, the Vantage score can be more advantageous just because it can capture things like utility payments, bank account balances, and so definitely there has been some wiggle room around credit scores, and hopefully the Vantage score might make some people who were considered maybe credit invisible that those folks might be able to get into the mainstream mortgage market. And I'm sorry, I've lost track of which FICO score is which. There are so many of them that I haven't committed them all to memory.
Yeah, credit, a topic for a whole nother conversation that we could have.
Yes.
Certainly, some proposing that debit uses should even be considered. That people who don't take risk are sort of unfairly penalized. So let's do that another time. Jeff Ostrowski with Bankrate. Thanks for joining us.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Welcome back to NTD Good Morning. Steph and Carrie here. And the holiday season, it's now upon us. And Miss America 2026 brought her graceful presence to the Madison Avenue street lighting celebration. It's the kickoff to the 39th annual Miracle on Madison.
The long-standing tradition donates 20% of sales from participating stores to support children at the MSK Cancer Center. NTD's Sean Marshall was there to capture the moment.
Bells on cocktail ring, making spirits bright.
Cassie Donegan, Miss America 2026, kicked off the Madison Avenue holiday lighting ceremony, cutting the ribbon to switch on the glow of 114 street trees lining Madison Avenue between East 57th and East 86th Streets in Manhattan, New York. A Queens, New York native offering welcoming remarks and singing her favorite surprise holiday song a cappella for the street audience.
Next year all our troubles will be miles away.
The event also launches a Manhattan shopping tradition of the 39th annual Miracle on Madison Avenue, a December 6th event where over 70 stores donate 20% of sales that day to benefit the Society of Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center's pediatric programs.
I got to spend time today at MSK in the pediatric program with some of the patients there, and it was just remarkable being able to see the impact that events like that are taking place on December 6th with Miracle on Madison, the way that those funds really funnel right into being able to provide that quality care to the patients there is just remarkable.
Awesome. And anything we can expect to see you in coming up this year?
Oh my goodness, all over the place. And if you are in any of the states that I'm in, I would love to see you. So do not hesitate to run up and say hi. I love meeting new people and getting to connect with everyone. It's my favorite part of getting to be Miss America is connecting and meeting and learning about all of the people across our country. So you can kind of see me everywhere. Just be on the lookout.
The Lowell Luxury Hotel donated their time and services to offer everyone assorted hot teas and pastries, and the MSK Caring Canines took a break from comforting pediatric cancer victims to make their guest appearance for the event attendees and performers.
Memorial Sloan Kettering has MSK Kids, which is its pediatric department, and MSK Kids treats over 800 patients with cancer every year. Families from around the world come in to be treated by the extraordinary doctors at MSK Kids and to avail themselves of the cutting edge technology and the clinical trials that are going on. No one really does it the way that MSK Kids does it.
The Broadway Carolers brought the full holiday spirit to the event, a special treat that really makes it feel like a night to remember.
We are the Broadway Carolers. We were founded by Renee Baker in the 90s. I think we just we're approaching our 25th anniversary, if not already. Yeah.
I think we might be hitting closer to 30 now.
I thought this was year 29 by my count.
Yeah. This is my 6th year doing it. It's my favorite gig of the year as a singer. The holidays are the best time to get out there and spread some cheer, so that's what we love to do.
Saturday, December 6th is the day to shop till you drop on Madison Avenue. 20% of store sales up to $15,000 per participating store will be donated to the Society of MSK Cancer Center to benefit the children there. Also on December 6th will be at least 12 carolers split into groups, the MSK Caring Canines, and hot beverages offered by the boutiques and restaurants. And hot chocolate will be there. Sean Marshall, NTD News.
Such a great report from Sean, and I know that money goes to a really great cause. I believe it's the first Saturday in December. They're going to be donating 20% of sales from the stores along Madison Avenue to Memorial Sloan Kettering and helping children with cancer. I was there once visiting with some of my family, and I know how much that cancer center means to the families who are going through that. And it stuck with me because I remember I was visiting my mother, who was, in her 70s, but there was a child that was on a stretcher getting loaded into the cancer center, clearly was undergoing chemotherapy. So anything that you can do to brighten those families' day, especially around the holiday season, is great.
And considering New York has become such an iconic place for Christmas, people coming from around the country and also around the world to celebrate Christmas right here in this city. And for them, through the generosity of the stores on Madison Avenue, to get to contribute to that Christmas good cheer and goodwill and helping others in that way.
Yeah, and Memorial Sloan Kettering, people are not only coming to New York to celebrate the holidays, but families from around the world are coming because it's one of the leaders in cancer research.
Right.
So those families, certainly appreciate all of that warmth around the holidays. So.
Well, staying with Christmas news, a 25-foot con-color fir destined for display as this year's White House Christmas tree has been cut down, wrapped, and loaded onto the back of a truck. That happened yesterday.
That's right. This tree, it was grown at Corson's Tree Farms in Sidney Township, Michigan, and it was selected after winning a nationwide contest for the distinct honor of getting your Christmas tree up in residence in the Blue Room of the White House.
Yeah, so it's the National Christmas Tree Association has their tree contest, and they have it every other year. The winner of the contest earns the right to provide the official White House Christmas tree that goes in the Blue Room. So, and we have competed in the national contest. This is the 6th time that we've competed. So. We've had, in 2015, we had the Reserve Grand Champion tree. So we presented a tree that went to the Vice President. We're very honored and very proud to be able to represent the real Christmas tree industry. And
Corson's is a family business that has been growing trees since the 1970s. The farm grows 12 different species of evergreens on more than 1,000 acres of farmland.
The tree is set to arrive at the president's home on Monday.
Exciting. Gosh, and we know there are so many trees that go into the White House over Christmas. Apparently the record was 62 trees in 2015. So we'll see what happens this year.
Yeah, they're really supporting the Christmas tree industry just there, right? And he was saying, well, one time we took 6th place, so we got our tree to the Vice President's house. Right. But this time the grand prize, the Blue Room in the White House.
It's always a sight to see. I'm looking forward to it. All right, it's time to get those letters into Santa in the mail. This week marked the start of the U.S. Postal Service's annual letter adoption.
That's right. Operation Santa gives children and families the opportunity to write letters to Santa.
That's it. People can then adopt a letter from a child to make sure those holiday wishes are fulfilled.
This year, you can choose to adopt a family as a team to ensure requests from the same household are met. You can visit USPSOperationSanta.com to learn more.
It's such a nice way to give a gift, the gift of Christmas.
That's right. Apparently, over the years, they've generated millions of gifts to families and kids in need who may not have the means to, get all the items on their wish list. But and of course, it's the mail where all the, unless it's you're giving to your own kids, grandparents and aunts and uncles, they're using the mail to get those gifts. So what a great way to engage with the post office and make a child smile, right?
That's it. Okay, well, I guess that's all we have time for.
That's right. But if you have any feedback for the show or you'd have something you'd like to see us cover, send us an email at goodmorning@ntd.com. We'd love to hear from you.
But for round-the-clock original news coverage, you can always watch us live at ntd.com/live or check us out on the app. I'm Stephanie Cox.
Gary Dunst. Have a great day.